Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith is again directed by George Lucas, and it's the last installment of the prequel Star Wars trilogy, starring all the same cast members from Episode 2.
Now we are talking spoilers, so if you haven't seen it already, stop what you're doing, go see it, and then come back and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, we don't want to ruin this movie for you.
No.
We have finally reached the end of the prequel trilogy of Star Wars, and in a lot of people's opinions, this is the worst trilogy of the Star Wars cinematic universe, so far at least. Now, this one, in my opinion, has the strongest plot in the fact that it starts in the Clone Wars. It's a rescue mission at first, and then it just kind of starts building up. It's basically war the entire time. And that's what I appreciate about this, is it is the Clone Wars.
The plot in this one is a lot more complex, and I think in terms of the tense feelings and emotions going through Anakin, as well as through the politics of the day and the Jedi Council and everything, makes it that much more interesting. And of course, they had to speckle in the weirdness between Anakin and Padme again with the baby and everything. But again, that has to be there in terms of getting Luke and Leia. So.
Well, this one, I think it started off probably the strongest of any of the Star Wars movies. I know that's pretty bold to say, but the opening shot, it's just one long shot of just the two Jedi starfighters piloted by Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker. They're just flying through this big, huge space battle. It's all this one shot for, I don't remember how many seconds, maybe 20 to 45 seconds. But it's really well done. But what follows that is such a disappointment with the droids. I felt that the droids were, for lack of a better description, neutered in this movie. In particular, the battle droids that were introduced in Episode 2, the ones with like the guns on their arms, they're given voices, and they're mainly for comic relief, especially when fighting against R2-D2. R2-D2 kills two of them himself, and then shocks one, and he's freaks out. He's like, "Ow!" and then kicks him. Those few scenes alone are enough to make me just really hate how they handled the droids. And the fact that the one that fires the buzz droids at Anakin and Obi-Wan has to talk to his wings to fire the missiles. But that aside, the CGI is definitely much better than in Episode 2, and especially Episode 1, in my opinion. It's just, I mean, that's an unfair comparison because it did come out 3 years after Episode 2 and 6 years after Episode 1. So, it's kind of not fair to make that comparison.
And there are so many great things about the plot in this movie. You got the battle of the heroes at the end between Obi-Wan and Anakin. And there's just a lot of really cool things happening in this movie in particular. So in terms of execution and all that other stuff, we can push that aside because of all of the other really strong plot points, I think.
Yeah. Well, I do have to say, though, that as bad as the love story is in Episode 2, I think the love story in this one is even worse and more awkward because of the dialogue.
But there's less of it.
There's much less of it, yes. But it's so much more cringeworthy, especially that part on Coruscant when, right after Padme basically tells Anakin that she's pregnant, they're on the roof or whatever, and she's brushing her hair. She's like, "I want to have the baby home in Naboo." And he's like, "You're so beautiful. It's only because I'm so in love." "No, it's because I'm so in love with you. So love has blinded you?" What does that even mean?
Crap.
It was so bad. And there's a couple, maybe two more scenes, maybe three, that involve the love story between them. But that one is just horrible. And I would argue that is worse than the sand line from Episode 2. Because
I agree. There's just so much of it in
that line
Episode 2.
It actually has some importance because Darth Vader may not like sand, so it kind of makes sense to hide Luke on Tatooine.
That's probably why
but
they
that
thought
is
it
just
was
so.
That's probably why they thought it was clever to put it in the second one.
But
let's be honest.
It was still bad. It was still bad. But we digress. It's all bad. All the dialogue between Anakin and Padme is just
Bad.
garbage, especially in this movie.
And some even between Padme and Obi-Wan.
Yes.
She's trying not to tell him where Anakin is, and
Yeah.
oh, how does anybody not know that Anakin is living with her?
Yeah, I know. It's pretty obvious.
They have this balcony that's wide open to the city. Somebody's bound to see them, be like, "Oh, look, there's Padme and Anakin."
Anakin? What's he doing there?
Yeah.
Suddenly, Padme's been wearing these baggy clothes. It's like she's trying to hide something. Yeah, she's pregnant.
Everybody knows it.
Yeah. And there's very little Jar Jar Binks, so that is a big positive for this movie.
You also have the deepening of the character where you're starting to really see the dark side of Palpatine coming out in little spurts and being very manipulative towards Anakin. And
Yes.
part of you's like, how come you didn't see that coming? And then to have him be so righteous in the beginning, this is the thing, is that the character inconsistencies in this movie is very disappointing as well, because Anakin, he's so much like the righteous Jedi at the beginning, like,
Yeah.
I shouldn't have killed Count Dooku because he needs to be on trial. And then he's very much in line with, I don't want to spy on Palpatine, and I also don't want to spy on the Jedi Council. He feels uncomfortable with all of this.
Yeah.
And then when they
And he's
actually...
being a good Padawan
Yes.
apprentice to Obi-Wan. Like, I say
Yes.
patience. Oh, okay.
Right, you
Well,
can see
that's a
him
good idea.
growing, but then all of a sudden he does a 180 when Mace Windu and Palpatine are against each other, and then all of a sudden he's so broken down by that, which he didn't like Mace Windu in the first place, so I'm not sure why that is the breaking point for him. But
Yeah.
and it's just, he seems to do a total 180, and he knows in that whole scene, Anakin knows that this is Darth Sidious. He's the Dark Lord we've been looking for, so he should, because of the rest of his character in the movie, he should be the one that's like, no, we need to either kill him or put him on trial and then execute him or something. But then he totally pledges his allegiance and completely is the Darth Vader, even though even his Darth Vader character at the end is not consistent with Darth Vader in the originals.
Yes.
But
Right.
and then if you want to talk about Padme,
Well, the fact is that we were never given a good enough love story to really care for Anakin and Padme's relationship. So for that to be the driving force for Anakin to turn to the dark side to save Padme, it
seems a little odd.
The audience is like, okay, why would he do that? Like, we don't see it.
the only thing I care about is Luke and Leia. I'm like, you better have those babies.
We just got to get to the babies. Come on, let's just fill in that gap. Natalie Portman gives her worst performance of the trilogy. She was better in episode
of
1.
any movie she's ever been in.
Yeah. She was, honestly, I think her best performance was in episode 2 because she's not so monotone. And it's better than this one because in this one she's just also lovey-dovey and she's not being a tough character. She's very inconsistent. And what you saw of like the beginnings of Princess Leia and the tough girl character of Padme in episode 2, you lose that entirely in this one.
Completely.
And she's just this like stay-at-home mom that is nesting and like, I want to have our baby home on Naboo and all this.
Which
like,
is totally not her.
It's not her. It would be different if that was her from the first and second one, but that wasn't. And they totally changed her character and didn't work. And another character that I thought was terrible was General Grievous. General Grievous, while his design was kind of impressive, he was a very advanced computer-generated character. I didn't care for his character at all, and it didn't really make much sense because Count Dooku trains him, and it's like, this is supposed to take place when? But I was annoyed by his coughing. I guess if you watch the Clone Wars TV shows, it makes some sense that's explained, but you know, seeing the movie for the first time, I had no idea why he was coughing. I'm like, he's a droid. Why is he coughing? He doesn't need oxygen. And then, of course, they reveal that he's got some organs left over.
But even without an explanation, the cough sounds awful.
Yes, it's annoying.
And I'm not saying awful as in he's supposed to sound awful.
Yeah,
I'm saying
it's
awful as in it doesn't even sound like a cough.
It doesn't.
It kind of just sounds like this gurgly robotic thing that doesn't. You're like, is he coughing? Is he sneezing? What's happening? But his character too is just trying to be all tough because, ooh, I've killed 3 Jedi already. Here's their lightsabers in my jacket pocket.
I did like his lightsaber fight. That was cool, seeing 4 lightsabers on one character. It was short-lived, but it was still cool.
Yeah, it was cool, but I just don't think that makes up for his character.
Yeah.
Because...
And I do have to say, there is the most lightsaber duels of any Star Wars movie in this one. And I do love that part about this one, is it is a war, and the Jedi are a big part of it, and you see that in this movie. There's lots of lightsaber duels, and I really enjoyed them.
All of them are.
All of them, except
very good. There's some that are better than others.
Yeah, the Mace Windu versus Darth Sidious Palpatine, it just looks... It's a little too slow for the style of this movie. It would have worked for episode 4, 5, and 6 because that was kind of the speed of the lightsaber duels in there. And this one, it looks just like 2 older men swinging sticks at each other. But it does have some good choreography, and the Yoda versus Darth Sidious scene is very entertaining, and the Anakin versus Obi-Wan is very dramatic. It's a little too choreographed, in my opinion. But it makes sense when you really think about the fact that Obi-Wan trained Anakin, so they would have very similar fighting styles. So they'd be doing like the same things, and I can accept that for sure.
Plus, how evenly matched they are. I like that about their battle in particular because of how well matched they are, and especially on a planet like Mustafar where there's lava everywhere and things. It's just very... You're hooked that whole scene.
Yeah.
Now, before that, you're like, oh. When Padme, oh, no, I didn't mean to bring him. And all that.
Breaking my heart.
All that crap. Let's just tell it like it is.
Yeah, it's crap.
Just crap. That whole scene is totally unnecessary.
That's what happens when you let George Lucas write dialogue between 2 people who are supposed to be in love. It doesn't work. It didn't work in the previous one. It doesn't work in this one either.
No. But in their defense, I think in terms of their whole relationship, this part makes the most sense.
Yes.
Because their relationship wasn't developed into being that deep, intimate bond between 2 people. It's more of the surfacey infatuation, lust, whatever, I can't be without you, I'm in agony type of thing, which is totally surface and doesn't have any basis for anything. And with that comes this insane jealousy that now Anakin has, and that's the part that's the only part that really makes sense in their whole relationship. I totally get that fact that he is like, you've turned against me. Obi-Wan is really the good guy because, let's be honest, Obi-Wan is so much cooler than Anakin.
Yes.
Until he becomes Darth Vader, and then you're like, you can argue about
Darth
that.
Vader's
But I
cool,
mean,
but in a bad way.
But that's the only part of their relationship that makes any sense in any of the prequels. Is that.
Now, while we did talk earlier about Natalie Portman's portrayal of Padme being inconsistent and her weakest performance, Hayden Christenson actually upped his game in this one. I felt that his acting chops got much better.
Or he just fit the role better with the creepiness, but...
Yeah. Well, it wasn't as creepy of a role. It was more of him being a soldier and a learner and trained.
Becoming more humble and a little bit less...
And I appreciated that, and it was nice to see him try harder and not be so whiny. I mean, yes, he is a little whiny in this one, but he's supposed to be. He's a Skywalker.
He also has a really good face for the dark scenes when he's very much like killing younglings and killing all the separatists on Mustafar and when he turns on Padme and everything. Yeah. He's got that really good.
I thought he did a really good job when the line is kind of cheesy. I mean, it makes sense. It's a very simple line where he just screams to Obi-Wan, "I hate you." he delivers that line really well. And you can see
feel it.
you can feel his agony and his hatred. Yes, the changing of his eye color helps, but I thought he did a really good job with what he was given.
So we definitely have to mention the clones in this movie in terms of being inconsistent as well as awesome at the same time.
Yeah.
I really liked how the clone troopers were brought more into this movie because that's what it's all about. They're starting to look more like the stormtroopers, which they're supposed to be. You see a few of the other slight variations of the clone troopers as well. And the advancement to the walkers, AT&T walkers and things like that. That, although it was probably a lot more for fans, I think they did a really good job with it. However, the inconsistencies with the clones is after Palpatine gives the order 66 for them to turn on everybody, before he gives the order, they all sound like the perfect soldiers. They're kind sounding. Their voices are very much, okay, I'm going to do this, but I'm also going to be, I don't even know how to explain it. Their voices are just much softer. But as soon as Palpatine gives order 66, all of a sudden, their voices get really mean.
Yeah. And raspy.
Yeah.
Like, before Order 66, you hear Captain Cody. Keep in mind, these are all the same character. They're all the same person. They're clones of one person, so they all sound the same. Before it, he's like, oh, by the way, I think you'll be needing this. And then later on Kashyyyk, you hear one of the clone troopers be like, all these Wookiees are dead. Move to the east. Like, they already sound really mean, and
as if the audience needs a clue that
like these characters
are
evil
bad
now. Not just because they're killing Jedi, but they just sound meaner now. And speaking of the Wookiees, when I first saw it, I thought it was a cool inclusion, but they don't do much. And the forcefulness of having Chewie in there was just
really heavy-handed.
Very heavy-handed. And it didn't need to be in there. It's like, oh, by the way, here's a character you know from the old movies. We're going to stuff him in here because...
Especially because he now knows one of the other beloved characters,
Yeah.
Yoda. You're like, I understand Yoda says he has good relations with the Wookiees, so I guess it doesn't
That was
really,
so forced.
it's not really that far-fetched, but it also is, considering there's nothing about it in the originals.
Yeah.
But
I mean, granted, Yoda and Chewie never meet again in the original trilogy, but still, it didn't need to be.
It just makes
forced
you
in this
wonder,
movie.
but it also makes you long a little bit for the Han Solo movie coming out, because I kind of want to know the backstory of Chewbacca now, because he is in the original. See what they might do with that. The other thing about the Wookiees is that I thought they did a pretty good job with the CGI of them.
Yeah.
I think, it was at least believable. It wasn't like so bad that you roll your eyes, but I thought it was pretty good. However,
I mean, most of them were costumes.
Yeah.
But when they're shown doing their stunts
well, I
and
liked
stuff,
that
they're
one
CGI.
scene where that Wookiee is jumping onto that other watercraft character. I think that's one of my favorite parts of the Clone Wars, is him jumping, and you're like, oh wow, a Wookiee, you finally get to see him in action, because Chewbacca, let's be honest, Chewbacca doesn't do much. But he's still a really great character, and we all love him. We need to talk about that other creature.
Oh,
what is the name of that planet? The Sanctuary planet.
Oedipal?
Oh yeah, where
whatever, I don't remember
Obi-Wan
how to
goes, and the guy is like, they're here, this is supposed to be Sanctuary, they're on the 10th level, and Obi-Wan's like, I understand, and then he pretends to go back to his ship, and the ship flies off, but really he's hiding, even though I don't know how in the world they would have seen him get off that, because it's wide open. Anyway, suspend your disbelief. He picks the loudest creature and the most odd creature to do the purposes to fulfill what he's trying to do there, which is sneaking around trying to figure out what General Grievous is up to. Why would you pick a chicken lizard, the loudest, biggest creature that moves so fast, like so oddly like a lizard, and yet makes chicken noises and has feathers, and it's like...
It's not quiet at all.
It's not quiet. It's not conspicuous. It's like, that looks like it's the only one on the island, or on this little planet, It's just, I'm not even going to attempt to make that noise.
No. That's the best I got. One of the best aspects of this movie is the music. The score by John Williams is again flawless. I mean, I can't think of any of the Star Wars movies that doesn't have a good soundtrack to it, and this is obviously no exception because it has some of the most dramatic songs of any Star Wars movie. With the song Anakin's Betrayal, that one does get pretty dramatic, and the Battle of the Heroes with Anakin and Obi-Wan's lightsaber duel. It's just really powerful music in this movie.
Yeah, and without it, if you didn't have that good of a score, honestly, maybe this is just my opinion for most movies, but the music has a lot to do with bringing out the emotions of the audience. Like this one, without that exact music, I don't think it would have been nearly as good of a movie. So, and a lot of it is the very recognizable themes that John Williams is able to come up with, which are awesome all the time. He's just amazing. So
do you consider yourself a movie buff? Well, I challenge you to download this game called Popcorn Trivia. It's a movie trivia app that you can download for free on your Apple or Android device.
This is a game where you can test your movie trivia knowledge, and Mike and I challenged each other to the Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith quiz. And of course, Mike beat me out by, what was it, 4 measly points?
8, actually.
8.
I got 300. She got 292. And we want to know what score you guys can get on Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith by downloading this app. It's really fun, guys. You can customize your own avatar, choose from hundreds of movies. In fact, every Friday on New Movie Friday, they release a new movie from the theaters, and even a regular old movie, and possibly a TV show, again on New Movie Friday. So be sure to check out this game, guys. It's called Popcorn Trivia.
And test your movie knowledge.
Now, if it isn't obvious enough, this is my favorite of the prequel trilogy. It's the most dramatic, it has the most lightsaber duels, and the CGI is the best in the prequel trilogy, that is. And for those reasons, I give Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith a B+. Now, it doesn't quite make it to an A- because I'm saving those for the original trilogy, but, you know, this movie does hit some very high points.
So this is also my favorite of the prequel trilogy. It's got a lot of really great action, great music, good CGI for the most part. And even though, you know, there's a few nitpicky things I could go after, I give Revenge of the Sith a B.
That's a good grade. So that's a wrap for the Star Wars prequel trilogy. Now we're going to move on to the original trilogy with Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, coming in 2 weeks.
And we want to know what you guys think of Revenge of the Sith, so let us know in the comment section below.
And if you like this video, be sure to give it a big ol' thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, make sure you hit that bell icon so you can be notified of when we upload new content. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.